Hello and welcome to the Opinion Pending Podcast. I'm Kristie.
I'm Scoop.
And I don't actually know anything about today's episode. Because you've left me completely in the dark.
Well, we always go back and forth on whether what we're going to talk about, and we can never pick anything.
Right.
And
that's why we haven't been back for another 2 months.
Yes. So, and recently we've been having a lot of discussions about things, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to drop this on her because we have better conversations right off the cuff, anyways.
Okay.
So, the last time we did this, I was the only religious skeptic in the group.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
I mean,
I was like, I had a lot of questions.
Well.
But now I just have more questions.
Before we get into all of that,
yeah,
I was just because no one here is gonna really have much of a background on any of this stuff. I don't think. Because that episode got bamboozled. I don't know. I'm curious where you stand on just the whole general thing. What are your thoughts? Because I know you have some questions and you're skeptical about some things, but overall, I don't actually know entirely where you stand, and I don't think the audience even knows where I stand. So we'll just kind of air that out.
Okay, so is that what your thing was to just be like, hey, do you have a stance yet?
Yeah. That was basically it.
Okay.
And it can be super fluid too. It's easy just to be like, you know what? I don't fucking know. Because, no one does.
Well, yeah.
So, if your stance is just whatever, then it's whatever.
I don't think anyone knows. Like they say they know. But no one can actually know. They just, have faith that they know. And they are really confident that faith is true. So they'll say that they know for sure, but you can't actually 100%, I don't think you can believe that you do, but I don't think that you actually can until you die and find out. Or, get raptured, I guess.
That's true.
But,
the whole idea that we're all in a simulation seems to be on the rise.
I hate that.
I know.
I hate that so much. And now Elon has taken over Twitter, and he's one of the biggest ones that talks about that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, please, Elon, don't. Please don't.
Although, in fairness, if we were in a simulation, wouldn't the people who control the simulation not want us to know that we're in a simulation? So putting someone who's really into simulations in a high position of power, wouldn't that be
Yeah, I figure if it was, it would be purely for entertainment or something. That's because it doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to it.
We're just action figures at the end of the day. We're video game characters.
Yeah, it's how about we let them know or have hints that they're in, but then they fight about it. So if that were true, which, I very much doubt, and I really hope it's not true. It's too much for my poor psyche. That I hope that if that were something that was happening, that they wouldn't just be a group of kid aliens playing with stuff.
That's true.
Which is the plot of a Stephen King book, actually.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Isn't that the whole thing in Men in Black?
Is it? I haven't seen that
at the end,
in a very long time.
We're just our universe is in a game of marbles inside a marble. Don't worry about it.
I think that just we've had questions about what we're doing and where we came from and what's going on and who's in control. Is anything in control? We've had those kinds of problems that wouldn't really, I guess, not problems, but questions that we've wanted to know the answers to for eons, depending who you ask. So we did come up with all kinds of things to describe what's going on.
To give a little bit of a background, because people just say Christian, and it has a big swath of people.
Oh yeah.
So my background is similar to yours, is
almost identical.
Yes, Calvinist. So everything predestined, that the big one, and then also come from a young earth creationist, everything in the Bible is literal background. Well, pretty much everything. So
at least Genesis is literal. Yeah.
Probably one of more of the fringe groups, I would think.
Yeah, I didn't realize that till more recently.
I thought everyone was like us, and then got a little bit older. I was like, oh, I'm on the fringe part.
Yeah, when I found out, there was actually kind of a lot of Christians, a good chunk of Christians that were old earth and didn't have a problem with old earth or evolution. I was like, oh my gosh, because I was always taught that you can't be a Christian if you believe in evolution. It's incompatible.
Right.
Because that would be you're denying scripture at the beginning. And so that basically you denying the nature of God in the first place. And then so you which doesn't really make any sense because, Okay, so.
Well, that was kind of my point of doing this conversation because it's the Calvinistic young earth stance. And then on the opposite end of that spectrum, which, I mean, it's not really an opposite thing, so it's kind of hard to put it on a spectrum.
Yeah.
But, kind of just where we sit, because I assume we're both not that way anymore.
No.
Pretty safe to say.
Well, at least not concretely, no.
Yeah, I got you.
Well, I know you're swimming somewhere, but I'm quicksand.
I'm a douche.
Well, were you done saying what your background was?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, yeah. So mine is basically the same. I just had about 5 more years of it. Calvinism, basically tulip, which is tulip was total depravity, or also known as total inability and original sin.
Mm-hmm.
U is unconditional election. L is limited atonement or particular atonement. I for irresistible grace. P for perseverance of saints. No, that's it. That's all.
Unconditional election.
Yes. That means that no matter basically, I think that basically means that you don't have control of it, because no matter what happens, if you are elected, you will be. It's an unconditional thing. There's nothing that can exempt you from it if you are chosen.
But some people aren't. Sounds like there's conditions to me.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's get on.
No, I mean, there's no conditions for the ones that are chosen.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah. But anyway.
Yeah, I think that was the one that always sat the worst with me. That's kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I've reached a point where I just kind of haven't made a concrete decision on it.
Mm-hmm.
I have hard leanings towards maybe this is all wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I don't really want to believe that.
Right.
And I'm kind of looking for other things first, because I feel like it would be wrong for me to throw it all out before considering the other perspectives, especially since we have so much experience with a very, very rigid form. And so there's so many other ideas in the same family.
Right.
And so I feel like it would be unfair for me, coming out of one of the strictest interpretations, to just automatically be well, therefore everything is wrong. Mm-hmm. Because I could just be wrong with the interpretation.
Right.
Who knows? And so I'm kind of more at a point, and I feel like it almost feels like I'm in denial.
How so?
Do you know what I mean? It feels like I'm saying that, but there's a thing in the back of my head all the time that's where this is going.
Oh,
you know where you're gonna end up. And that freaks me out.
Yeah.
I don't like it. But I'm not willing to let that part win as of yet, or right now. So my willing conclusion, without my intrusive thoughts being oh, it's over, it's all over.
Right.
Is that I'm basically there are a bunch of things that I grew up being taught as the absolute right interpretation of things. Mm-hmm. And I basically don't believe that that's true.
Right.
Or possible.
It's kind of I don't remember who said it, but someone said the idea that, you're born into a certain culture around certain people, and all these people have their ideas about how the world works and how it should be, and how, one way is better than the other, that sort of thing. Right. Which is, true in pretty much everything. There's always certain systems that are better than others. But someone said that the idea that you're just born into this group, and this group automatically has every right opinion on every little very intricate detail about human life, and that you just naturally fell in there, and you're just right, and everyone's right about everything, and everyone else is wrong. The chance of that being the case is just extremely small.
It's a very arrogant outlook as well.
Yeah.
No, that's just not even realistic.
Yeah.
Even if it's true that the Bible is inspired and is the actual word of God, which, I'm trying here. Even if that is, solid, that doesn't mean that everybody who's been translating it is solid. We even have arguments in the Christian community over which translations are good and which are bad. Mm-hmm. And people fight over using certain versions because they think some are trash and some are the best. And it's so even if the source is correct or has a lot of correct stuff in it that hasn't been messed up, there's a lot of potential for messing it up after that. And so I wouldn't be so keen on being well, I'm definitely sure I got this right. Mm-hmm. Especially when your own ideas don't really mesh with each other. Mm-hmm. which is what I was talking to my brother about recently, like last night.
How'd that go?
I mean, I was trying not to be too abrasive because I'm used to talking to you about things. Oh, yeah. And so I get I'm a little more openly cynical.
I'm sorry.
Like with how I address it with you.
Yeah.
But like when I talk to him, he's a lot more, he's not as like questioning. Mm-hmm. He doesn't really have a problem. He's not worried. He's like, I don't really feel any kind of, conflict in myself about this. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, I wish I could be like you. So with him, I try to tone it down a little bit and not come across as like too aggressive with my questioning because I have a lot of them, and I don't want to mess him up if he feels content.
Yeah, that's actually kind of funny. It made me like when I first started questioning all this stuff, I was like, I felt crazy because like you said, there's two ideas. Right. So when you come from a Calvinistic background, it's everything in your life is predestined, right? Mm-hmm. So like your life, the end of your life, whether you go into heaven or hell type thing, is all chosen beforehand by God, right? And there's not really a way to...
Well, yeah, at least your like salvation is. I don't know exactly what it means for the rest of your life.
Well,
but yeah.
Yeah, but basically the middle part's iffy, but the end is set in stone, right? Uh-huh. And, it never sat well with me, the idea of you have no choice in the matter, but also like hell is probably a thing, you know what I mean? And then I was like, well, there's that idea, which seems pretty harsh and cruel. But then at the same time, every week I go to church and everyone's praising like God's goodness and God's like unconditional love, and God, like he's a father times like a million, right? Like he's the best dad that could ever exist, right? But it's like, I mean, I have a pretty decent dad, and I mean, he doesn't want me to burn in hell for all eternity kind of thing, you know what I mean? And so there's just ideas that didn't sit well with me at the very beginning.
It's like if he did have the power to torture you for all eternity, like would he do it if you were rebellious like nonstop?
Right.
Probably not. I don't think he would want to.
Yeah. Well, that was my point, is that when you were saying that, you talk to people who don't really seem to think about it as much as, say, like you or someone else, or who's more inquisitive, like they kind of threw me off too, because I would ask these questions and I was just like, am I crazy? Like no one else seems to care. And I was like, this seems odd that I care about this and other people don't. And like, that's a little unfair because there's plenty of things that are really big in the world that I don't really have super strong feelings for, but people obviously do. So, I think it just kind of comes down to how we're wired, and different things set different things off. But I just remember being like, I don't know, I've been doing this for so long and no one even asked this question. Like, I don't know.
Because it seems like, well, it's kind of like what you said before. If you believe that you're already in the right spot, mm-hmm. and you were born and you have this knowledge, and then you submit to that knowledge and you believe that it's like the ultimate truth that there is. Mm-hmm. And it also, as a perk, kind of saves you from eternal torment, and you actually believe that you are one of the chosen to escape that fate, then maybe you won't feel too concerned about it. Well, yeah. Because you're not really questioning whether that's in store for you. And so why would you feel so worried?
That's true. And in fairness, I did kind of think about, I don't know, I was always interested in, I guess, like the mechanics, if you could call them that. Like I remember I was in like 3rd grade or something, and I'm sitting in class, and like it's a Monday, the day before that, people were talking about heaven and how you're going to hang out for all eternity. And I was like, eternity. Like I'm going to live to be like maybe like 8, but then it's like another 8, and it's like another one and another one and another one. And then I was just sitting in class and I just started sobbing.
Oh no. It's scary.
Like the concept of just forever and ever and ever and ever. And people were like, you're gonna spend all of eternity like bowing down and praising and singing God's praises and stuff. And I was like, I'm just gonna be on my knees, face down, like just up and down worshiping God for all eternity. That's horrific. And I lost it. I was just in class sobbing, and they're like, what's wrong with you? And like I feel bad for the teacher, because most teachers would be like, oh no, someone broke your favorite crayon or something, and I'm over here with like existential dread about eternity.
This little boy crying about how he's gotta worship God forever. Like you don't even know what to say to him.
It's like, I don't even know if you're allowed to say anything.
Yeah, you just gotta be like, we're gonna go to nap time now.
We don't talk about church stuff at school. We're not supposed to. But anywho, good luck with that.
An early recess.
They just run to the desk for like a manual to help kids. It's like, nothing about here is about existential dread. You're in 3rd grade. Calm down.
Yeah.
That's a good memory.
I remember being younger and having that issue where I would just be like thinking about it just never stops.
Yeah.
It keeps going that way, but it's got to stop. But no, it doesn't stop.
Yeah,
it keeps going.
Yeah.
And then I had a panic attack. Yeah. Like, because I just could not, I mean, nobody can fathom it, but just the idea of like no end ever. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, it just made me feel sick. Like, it made me feel physically sick when I would think about it too long, and then I'd get panicky. Yep. And that's just, for like the good one.
Yeah, the bad one. It's just
like yeah. And then you like hold this over like some little kid's head, and you're like, oh, well, this is what you get to do. If you are saved, you get to be, and they don't paint it like, it's not like condescending or anything. Yeah. It's like a nice, because you're not going to be hurting. It's not like you get to do nothing. Mm-hmm. You get to do basically everything that you would do, but just like without it being sinful.
Right.
And so,
and in fairness, like when I was younger, we definitely went to churches that had a lot more older residents in them. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of these people are like, old and achy, and they're constantly in the doctor's office, and they're constantly like feeling pain and discomforts and stuff. So it's like, obviously that kind of message to that group of people is going to be uplifting, because you're like, well, you're not going to feel pain anymore. You can run and skip and jump and hop, and you don't have to feel your achy joints, and you can just be happy, right? Mm-hmm. But, for a tiny child who doesn't know anything about that sort of stuff, just being like, oh, I have to, like, sit in church for all eternity?
Yeah. Or you, like, it's like doing a face plant off your scooter for eternity.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
like,
on the opposite spectrum.
I'm assuming kids probably don't think so much about, like, different forms of torture, hopefully.
Yeah, I didn't even really think about hell that much until I got older, because obviously as a kid you assume you're one of the good ones. Well, at least I did. I was like, oh, well, I'm going to go to heaven. Obviously I'm going to heaven. I sit in church all day.
Well, right? Yeah, and then you find out you actually have to believe something, and you're like,
oh
no. Yeah, I guess, yeah, that if you wanted me to sum it up, which, I'm not good at summing things up.
Oh, I am.
But if I had to sum it up, it would be, I'm kind of in like a floating mode, kind of like how I am politically. Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm kind of floating in all aspects, and kind of just, I am obviously, I have been delving more into atheist like talking points and like discussions, and seeing kind of what people say there. That doesn't mean that I agree with it all the time, but it almost always makes sense to me.
Right.
But I haven't really decided that it's true, because there's a lot of things that make sense but aren't necessarily correct.
Right.
Or they can both be true at the same time. Some things.
Yeah, sometimes.
So I'm kind of just figuring it out. But I do know for sure there are some concepts that I grew up with that I don't think make sense. Like, for example, last night I was talking to my brother, and I was telling him how if we, as Calvinists, truly believe in predestination, and that nothing happens without God's intervention, basically. Mm-hmm. And that he knows all the hairs in your head. He knows everything that's going to happen. It's all like a plan. Mm-hmm. I said, and you would say that you believe that, right? And he's like, yeah, like, everything's predestined. Mm-hmm. And I said, how can that be true at the same time as like God's will being like something other than what's happening? Mm-hmm. Because like I said before, like I've brought this up before, God explicitly states that he desires for no one to perish, but for all to come to repentance. Mm-hmm. And if the only way that people come to repentance is from him choosing them to do so, and the other ones have no chance of even coming to repentance because they can't do it by themselves because it's total depravity, then how can those things exist at the same time? It either can or God can desire something and also not do it. Like his will can be different from what actually happens, but that's not true either, because we know that God's will is always done. Mm-hmm. So basically it came down to a discussion of whether God's will and God's desires are the same thing.
Right.
And I feel like that would be, because it's literally what he's willing to happen.
Yeah.
And if he really doesn't want something to happen, why would he let it happen?
I feel like you could take that argument and probably have a better time combating it if you were in a different like sect of Christianity, because like, if you come from like a free will
that's area. What I mean. I said that's what I've kind of come to. Yeah. I feel like some of the core concepts don't really work together, because I said that it does make sense if you have a free will outlook, because someone has a choice.
Well, there's still some small,
but it's not nearly as big.
Yeah, you can definitely help but there are definitely like bigger problems that are, still to discuss. But yeah, I see your point.
I don't think that there's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that like Jesus isn't real or that I don't believe that he's real. It's just really hard to come to grips with some stuff. And I don't want to be faithless. I don't want that. But I also don't want to be like in a place where like I believe in nothing. Because I feel like the odds are that there's something happening somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
It just makes more sense to me that there is some kind of undercurrent of something because things are just so complicated. And, we've talked about before how like there's this, there's convergence of things all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And people who are completely separate from each other converge on a lot of similar things. And even animals do. And like if you follow like evolutionary paths, a lot of creatures that are completely different areas of the world and never interact with each other, like with DNA wise or whatever,
mm-hmm.
they end up converging into similar types of animals for like some reason. Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't seem to be a random thing, but it's also like similar enough
mm-hmm.
that it like results in something that's like physically that people mix up sometimes. Like you can see two animals and they look like they're almost like cousins or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're similar enough that people can mix them up. And I feel like that's kind of more than just not random.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just feel like things are complex. And I know some atheists probably going to pop up and be like, actually, like,
right.
This is what explains that. Because there's always something. I just feel like everything, like I'm trying and everything else is like chipping away at me.
I'm sorry.
Because I really don't want to believe in nothing. I really don't.
Some of the people make it hard too, because you grow up in a church and you're told that people are supposed to be Christian-like, right? And they're all Christian-like until you ask them questions, and then suddenly everyone's hackles gets up and everyone's very defensive and very attack mode, and you're like, man, it's really hard to have these conversations with you guys.
Yeah, and I've said some that kind of reminds me of the thing I talked to you about before with my brother too, where he said that after talking to him about some of these points this guy was making, he said, well, it sounds just like he's like upset that people aren't following what they believe very well. And so he's decided that their beliefs aren't true based on like their behavior.
Where the guy
I'm like, well, it's not.
Because I watched that video too, and the guy, he wasn't necessarily, he was making a point that some of the lessons from the Bible, like people were not really engaging with them. But at the same time, it wasn't so much that he had a problem with. It was the kind of like what we're talking about, like the little contradictions, I guess you could say. Yeah.
Well, his seemed to be like kind of more that the whole set of beliefs seem to have changed so much over time.
That's true.
And that now it's like not even required to really put as much effort into things or to practice them as much, because it's kind of this idea of, like even in like Calvinism, if you're elect, you're elect. Once you're saved, you're saved. That's it. Like nothing can stop that from being true anymore. But then they also, have the caveat where it's like, but that doesn't mean that you use your freedom to go and sin, because if you do that and you have like a completely sinful lifestyle after that with no type of, effort to live the right way, then it's evidence that like you weren't actually in the first place. Yeah. And so it's like a guessing
those
game.
Conversations never went well for me because I never got answers on either end of those.
It's basically what my brother said. He was like, well, you don't know, like, but you can't know. So like he said, it doesn't really matter so much because like it's basically you're assuming someone is, but you can't ever really know.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess he finds that kind of weird to dwell on if it's something that you can't know for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't make it less annoying, but I guess.
I don't think that's dishonest, but I don't think that's very well thought through. Because if you honestly felt like you had no control over how your life goes, and the only reason it doesn't bother you is because there's no way of knowing, that just tells me that you think you're one of the ones who makes it in. And I feel like it would bother you a lot more if you just automatically knew you're not going to.
Well, yeah.
Because can you imagine if God came down and he goes, anyways, well, you're going to hell, and then just disappears, and you're like, oh, well, okay.
That'd be bad.
Yeah. It's like, oh, that's fine. I'm fine with that answer. But God is God, I am I. It's like,
well, you wouldn't be fine with it then, no.
Exactly. So, like,
but I guess
so I don't think it's dishonest. I just feel like it's.
Well, yeah, I guess the consolation is that people that are there is like an established pattern for how people react.
Mm-hmm.
Like they actually like set out certain things that set people apart from like people who don't believe. And so you're supposed to have evidences of that, and you know in yourself if you actually want, if you're actually trying, if you actually have conviction or not. But that's what I mean though. Like it's weird to me because there's so many people who have like deconstructed and deconverted, and they say that they definitely believed it. Mm-hmm. They're like, I know I did. I felt conviction over things, and I felt,
because like I served in my church. You know?
Yeah, and it wasn't just like doing things. Like some people were just there, sitting around.
I was the youth pastor. I was the worship leader. I was the
but it's not like just even stuff they were doing. It was stuff that like on a personal level, when other people weren't involved, they themselves had experiences where they felt personally that they had conviction over certain sins or genuinely wanted better and wanted to be better, and it actually mattered to them that they were doing better. It wasn't just like being part of church.
Right.
And so it was more of a personal thing. And so there's people who were like that, and I feel like that's part of the evidence is that people bring up. It's like you are convicted over a sin and you're trying to do better and you're trying to combat it. And so how can you tell someone who had all those experiences too that they never believed it in the first place? Mm-hmm. And so that doesn't, like, what basis do you have? Just that like the outcome means that the beginning wasn't real? They just didn't know that they weren't being real?
Yeah. I think I was talking to you a while back, and I think that was part of one of my problems is that the quote unquote like sanctification process is vague to a point where it's basically you can't distinguish one or the other. Right? Because if you took one of these people who deconverted during their process of trying to answer questions constantly in research, trying to affirm their beliefs or trying to get like actual answers, it's like that's a pretty strong sanctification like sign. But then you have someone else who's, they struggle with a certain sin or something, but they're still going to church, they're still praying about it, they're in counseling about it, and they still and it's just like it never changes or something. And it's just like, well, I'm just in the sanctification process. It's just a process. It's just a process. And it's like, that's fine. And people who want to get better and find truth and stuff, like, that's great. Keep it up. But I feel like it's too much of a catch-all to the point where it loses a lot of its meaning because you can't really measure it in any like real way, I guess.
Yeah, it kind of gets it gets kind of watered down for a lot of people to be just kind of like self-improvement, which a lot of people do in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. And so you could be like appearing improved and not really changing what you are like at all. Yeah. Because you could just do more things. There's people who like will go volunteer and do all this stuff.
But some people like they'll just throughout the week they'll do whatever they want, but then they go to church and like they fall on their knees, they're crying, they're begging God forgiveness for like the way they live and stuff. And it's like, well, I should probably be a little bit clearer on this point because I don't want to like, because the people who do that, like, I'm not going to tell them that their emotions aren't real, because and a lot of times they are. Like, people just have a way of living that they don't, it's what they do. And then they go to church and they get filled with guilt, and then they cry out for God, right? And I'm not going to say that's a lie, but like once that emotional high is gone, they're, you know what I mean? And it's like, I don't know, I have a hard time because it's like that is an honest cry out for God, right? They're not going to really do much to change it. But, technically that is a fruit of the Spirit, right? Like that's technically like one of the signs you want to look for. So that's like a starting off process. So for me to be like, well, you're just obviously not a Christian seems dishonest.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. That like, that's why the whole thing is about, that's what the sanctification is supposed to be. Mm-hmm. It's supposed to be the process of working towards actually having your life be identifiable as a Christian. So people can actually watch what you do and you actually follow through, and you have these kinds of struggles where you're actually basically moving towards an end instead of just doing the same thing back and forth over and over and like continuing to live that way. Like something's got to give at some point, basically. And if something never gives, then that's supposed to mean that you never really were able to push anyway.
Yes, I don't know.
I mean, that's what the concept is supposed to be anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. People's lives are so like intricate, and everyone does different things for different reasons. It's hard to, I guess, sanctification is just hard to pinpoint for me to be an actual measurement of anything. But I don't know.
It's just not like a fun process.
No, it's
this entire thing. Because I'm the type of person that needs some kind of structured outlook on things.
Authoritarianism.
Well, listen, my uncertainty in life is like my biggest problem. Mm-hmm. That's always been my problem. That's the thing that is at the root of all of my issues, mentally and otherwise. is an uncertainty problem. So the idea of scrapping everything that I've ever grown up with and everything I ever used to understand anything around me being like gone or changing drastically, at least, is like really scary, because then it's like, well, where do you even look next? Because if it does fall to like, well, this is all about people, and people are moral because they choose to be moral, and that's why we have structures. It's like, that's not structural to me that much, because it could change all the time. All it takes is a shift in majority. So that's just like kind of scary to me, because it feels so unstable, because I don't trust people. I don't trust humanity to do the right thing, because like we don't usually, it seems like. But like, what is the right thing? And so it feels like it puts everything on like a temporary like pedestal, where it's like, oh, well, this is what we have now and it's pretty stable, but like in 50 years one of the things could be knocked out and we could have a wobbly table because everyone just decided that we're not going to do that one thing anymore. And so I feel like it would deprive me of the structure that I need in my life. I need there to be some authority somewhere. And I don't know what that says about me, but I feel like I'm the type of person that needs an authority in control of things to make sense of it all. And I don't know what you think about that.
No, I'm still figuring that one out.
But I just don't know how to. And so I wonder if that like scares people back into beliefs sometimes.
I mean, I have heard people say, like, you know, if God doesn't exist, then, like, what's the point in like, anything? It's like, well, I don't know if I'm willing to just jump there yet, but...
And then there's, like, the Pascal's wager, where you're like, you know,
yeah,
I'm just gonna assume that there is, and I'm going to live as if there is, because if I'm wrong, it's way better than if, you know, it's so fine if I'm wrong, but if I'm right, then that's, you know, infinitely important. So yeah, I'm just kind of... Yeah, I'm evaluating, and I have, like, the little voice all the time that's just telling me, it's over, you're done for. And I don't like that.
Done for in, like, in what sense? What are we talking about?
And, like there's a part of me that's like, yeah, you're saying that you're still thinking about it. But, like, you actually know that you don't believe it anymore. You know it. There's, like, a part of me that's, like, telling me that all the time. And I don't know if that's true or not. It's scaring me.
I mean, you can just pretend there is. So you can just pretend that there is.
Pretend there is what?
I don't know, whatever you're looking for.
No, I mean, like, there's, like, a part of me, but I also have a lot of intrusive thoughts. And so it's kind of hard sometimes to, like, distinguish what's what. So I admit that I have those thoughts where it's like, yeah, you don't believe this. But at the same time, I can disagree with myself. And I can be like, no, I'm not done looking at this, and I'm not willing to say that yet. Just because it's like there's like a tug that way, and it scares me. But I'm still asking a lot of stuff, and I'm not really, I'm not to that point yet.
Yeah.
I told you I'm dangling.
Well, I mean, you know, it's not completely hopeless down here.
No, but it does make me feel sick.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was stressed out because, like, I don't know, pretty much every belief I had on any specific topic was because I was told that's what it is by Christians. And then I was like, well, you move that cornerstone, and you're just kind of like, well, great, now I have to rebuild all my thoughts on all these different things and actually give, like, really good reasons now, and not just because God said so. You know, that was my go-to for so long that, yeah, a lot of reinstalling some hardware, you know. I had a factory reset.
I was looking at Renlink uploaded a thing, because, you know, they did their deconstruction videos. Then they had some updates after that, like they did like a year later update thing, and then they had like a 2-year one. And I don't remember when it was uploaded. It was like, I don't know, a few months ago maybe. But Rhett had been reading a book about this guy who he's like in his 80s now, but he went from being like a church leader and having a lot of doubts and stuff, to being agnostic. But then he said that towards the end, he had decided that he would call himself a Christian, but he doesn't actually believe in all of that anymore. And he said that the reason was that he identifies really strongly with the story of Jesus and what he said and did and represented and everything. And so there was like basically a core thing to who he was, that he basically considered him as Christian in that sense, himself to be. So I guess it would be kind of more like philosophically Christian. And so...
An atheist for Jesus, yeah.
Yeah, I guess. Well, agnostic, but...
Agnostic for Jesus.
But Rhett was like saying that he felt so strongly, like he felt like so in tune with that guy and all the stuff he was saying, that he went out and he bought another Bible. He's like, I got a lot of Bibles already, because he had a background in it, but he bought a new Bible, a new study Bible. Mm-hmm. And he said that he had decided that he was going to revisit it and read it, but not because he said that it was so important to him and he spent all of his formative years growing up with it and being taught from it. He said it probably literally changed his DNA in some ways because that's just what he was engulfed in all the time. And he decided that he was going to like not go back and like re-believe it, but he was going to re-examine it from where he is now and kind of see what he gets out of it from a different perspective. Knowing that it's like a core part of who he is because that's where it came from. And it was kind of interesting because...
Is he going to document that at all?
I don't know.
I'm kind of curious.
He would like tweet stuff sometimes, but I don't know if people are staying on Twitter anymore. Oh, well. So who knows? But yeah, that was kind of an interesting concept. But like, I feel like that's part of it though. I feel like my main problem is that there's so many different things, like what the guy was talking about in the video. He said that if you go back to the early church, there's like so many things that have been changed. And like I sent you an article about like hell.
That's like a 12-page thing. I got through the first. I'm still working on it.
Well, I was kind of skim reading. Oh. Because I kind of scrolled down to the main point. But even like early church, they had like kind of wildly different opinions on like a lot of different things. And they were coexisting and not calling each other heretics and like throwing each other out of the church and everything. Right. There were people that believed in eternal damnation, like hellfire and everything. There were people that didn't. They believed it was like a temporary one where people were brought and tormented for like a time until they came to repentance, which is like a form of universalism. Where it's like, yeah, you are judged because you're sinful and you died sinfully, but you also have opportunity through that to be saved still. You just, can be spared that agony if you don't take that path in the first place. The other one was like basically just being wiped from existence, which is probably better than hell. Yeah, so that was just on hell. And there was like all kinds of different like core aspects of Christianity that people really had different ideas about. And that was like early church, like 4th century. So I'm just thinking some of this could be like, because a lot of the reasons that it doesn't work with God, like God doesn't work in a lot of, like there's so many arguments. Maybe some of it I would like to go back and kind of see what the different things were from like back when it was started, because they seem to be a lot more open to nuance back then and basically saying, well, we serve God, but we don't exactly know how he works. Right. And we believe that he's in control and that things are happening, but we don't necessarily, like it says these things, but this can mean this or this. And so they kind of just let it be ambiguous, or like not ambiguous, but like they didn't try to put a definite on it for everybody. They just said, I think this is what this means from my study. And then other people would be like, well, I think it means more like this. And they go, okay, well, okay. And so I feel like more comfortable in that space because I feel like it allows me to believe in something still, but also understand that there's a whole bunch of concepts that have been discussed and gone back and forth for so many years that some of them have just come out on top. But that doesn't always mean that they're right, obviously, because we have a lot of stuff just from people that aren't religious, concepts that still exist that aren't necessarily good, but it's kind of common. And so I'm like, the same thing can happen if people are interpreting things for like hundreds of thousands of years. And so that gives me more hope to understand that like things can be a lot less definite than I think they are, and that everyone tells me they are, and that's fine. And I can believe in something and believe things are true, but not completely believe that like it is as it's been portrayed to me all the time.
It's a little bit more leeway.
Do you just think I'm like groveling for something? Not groveling, but like, does it sound to you like I'm just grappling for something? Because I feel like it comes across that way.
I wouldn't. No, not really.
Because I know that you probably think I'm going to end up someplace.
I don't know. I really don't. I'm a lot more comfortable. I don't want to necessarily call it lies, but there are definitely certain things in society that they work because we all agree on it. Like there's no cosmic rule that says, flashing a green light at a stop sign will make people go, right? That is something that we decided to do. We just said, you know what? Green lights mean go, right? And humans made it up and said, it, in the grand scheme of things, flashing a green light means nothing, right? But we made it mean something. And I'm okay in that space. Like it doesn't bother me that much if all of my like morals and ideas on stuff literally just come from the environment around me and what we think about just on the time of, so like, for instance, like, I don't know, like medicine, right? There are certain medical practices relatively recently that are pretty immoral and unethical, but during the time were kind of experimental and iffy, and people weren't as bothered by them. Or even further back, people are like, oh yeah, this will do you a ton of good, and it turned out it was killing people, right? Like, I don't know, sticking leeches on your body is probably not the best way to cure something, right?
Doctors used to approve cigarettes.
Yeah, like, like if you were pregnant, they were like, yeah, you take a cigarette, it'll take some of that stress away, right? Stuff like that. It's like,
I didn't know till like 40 years later they cut up John Doe when his lungs were black.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, that killed him. You don't smoke those.
We are a species that's just kind of moving along as we go, and we're course correcting as we go, and some of it's late and it sucks, and we're not perfect. But I'm also okay to just be like, I'm a product of my time, and there are gonna be ideas, presumably like 100 or 200 years from now, that people are gonna go like look back and be like, they thought that, like, really, like they really thought that, there's and I'm okay with that. And I'm also fine with like truth is obviously one of the biggest things in my mind, but I also understand that there are certain, I guess, lies that I'm fine with. Let's see, I'm trying to think of a good example. Like, a lie in society that I've seen is like, people think that the police force is like strong enough to be able to, hold back a certain amount of crime, right? Take like 20% of the population that just wanted to be criminals and then just started doing crime, like the police force would be powerless, right? To stop.
Be gay and do crime.
You know what I mean? I'm obviously not advocating for that, but I'm just saying that, like, but the idea that there is a police force and they might get you, like, tends to keep people in their place, right? There's no, like, we all have these societal constructs that we agreed upon to play the game by, and we try our best. You know what I mean? And so I'm fine with living in certain lies if I have to, if that makes sense.
I guess.
That I guess means you don't know what I'm talking about.
I mean, I understand, but I feel like I can't land there because my mind always goes back to like, well, why it always goes back and back and back and back and back, and it's like, well, why are you content with that? Because it makes society better, and society being better and safer is good. Okay,
I don't even necessarily mean better. I just think it functions.
It's like stable. Would you be content in a society that was stable and safe and everything, but like it was kind of like dystopian? Everything's taken care of for you, but you don't really get to do anything.
Like I said, it is kind of a spectrum because, like, it's like do I want a medical system? It's like, well, we're going to, if you ever have like an infection, we're just going to cut it off. It's like, well, I don't really want a medical system now. You know what I mean? But it's like, what if it's a really good medical system, but it's expensive? It's like, well, I kind of want it now. It's like, it sucks that it's expensive, but I'd rather have one than not have one. You know what I mean? So it's kind of, each individual topic is going to have an individual answer, depending on the circumstances. But overall, the way things are running and the way humans kind of interact with each other, like, I'm fine with. I'm like, there's plenty of areas that a lot of us agree need to be shored up and made better, or made better outcomes for a lot of people, but I'm fine with that just being a human construct for the sake of humans. Like, I'm fine with there being no cosmic law that says it has to be this way. It's just, this is what we decided, and I'm fine with. I'm not as unnerved by that as some people.
I can understand that, and I can see how that works for people. But like, I always go back and I'm like, it just doesn't make sense to me that I understand that, I guess technically it is possible that things happened and they just happened, and that it produced things that also developed the way they have, and I guess statistically it's likely. Right. But it just feels like, there's just something, it's just like,
but it feels like something,
because it's
but you want to go back on that one?
It's the pattern.
But why do you feel like something has to be there?
Because it doesn't make sense to me. Why do you feel
like patterns matter?
Because it doesn't make sense to me that, like, given what we know about people and people's natures, if things work only because people want things to work, because it benefits themselves and those that care about, then why? But that doesn't really answer the question of why people care in the first place. Like, why people care enough to even want to survive. Especially in societies like ours, where like things are kind of bad and the world's never been like, it's the best it's been right now. And it's always been like worse. It goes worse as you go back.
It's been getting better as we go.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But that's only because people have this will to keep on going even when it's bad. And if there really is nothing, why would it matter for you to keep surviving through a bunch of stuff? Like, to what end? Is it just legacy?
I don't know.
Is it just that? That's what I mean. There's like some kind of undercurrent in everything that's like a driving force. I feel like it just is, because people do have an inherent will to survive. And it's not just people. It's like pretty much all of nature has that in it.
But you could say that is just a byproduct of nature. But the fact of wanting it to matter is, I don't know. Like,
it doesn't make sense to me, at least, that there is this undercurrent of continuing to try just for the sake of trying or for the sake of being alive. Like, why does existence mean so much to people? Why do things even mean anything to us in the first place? Beyond our physical needs, because it's not really important in that worldview unless it's important only in the sense that it keeps other people chugging along as well. That's like the only real benefit for anything, because it's like, well, you stick around longer, then you have others that come from you and they stick around longer, and then it keeps going. But like, if that's the only motivating factor, then like, why are we motivated?
Well,
because there's got to be something.
See,
because it feels
I don't disagree with you in the sense that like there are those empty holes of like trying to figure it out, but I feel like it's not enough for me, because it feels dishonest for me to go, I agree with you, there are those holes, therefore there should or has to be something
like
bigger.
God of the gaps, right?
Yeah, and that's basically
but I feel like it can also be.
It could be true.
It could be true.
But for me personally, it would feel dishonest to be like, there are these holes that I don't understand personally. Therefore, it makes sense to me that there has to be something more. And it's like, well, there doesn't have to be something more. I don't know.
Right.
But I mean, there could be, but I don't know.
Well, I guess for me, it's just that I've found like so many there are so many good things in the Bible that I agree with, especially like the idea of like the nature of man and how like people's hearts are pretty wicked a lot of times. And that would jive with the whole worldview of everything is just self-serving, with the purpose of, and if you're not self-serving, if you're not a selfish person, then it's only because you're enhancing it for other people, so we all get served, so it's still self-serving.
Well, yeah, but you can be self-serving and you can.
I mean, it's not for any like it's not for any like reason aside from just a natural continuation.
I guess, yeah.
Basically, it just allows people to take religion and be like, well, this is just a tool that people use to give themselves meaning so that they can continue to go on and keep producing and reproducing. It's just a thing that we've made up to like justify meaning to ourselves. And I'm like, why would we need to do that? There has to be some kind of, you see, I mean, there seems to be something a little more complex happening. Because, it doesn't make sense that why would we, as a species, have developed a need to have validation if it doesn't matter?
I get that, but at the same time, you could take that and say, because different cultures have this thing that they keep repeating, right? But you could also look back and say, like, every single culture, you know, a lot of them make their own sports with, like, balls and stuff, and you don't talk about the transcendent ball, you know what I mean? Like
no, but people don't generally use sports to like justify their existence.
Well, no, but
it's just like a thing people do for fun. If you talk about it
as a community thing of people getting together and chanting and painting themselves and competing, and like it's just guys throwing a ball around the court, but it makes thousands upon thousands of people happy and engaged and active, and that's what church can do in a lot of ways. It gets a lot of people together and they,
but that's not
sing and dance and all this stuff. And so, like,
the point of it, though.
Well, no, it's not the. I mean, the point.
I mean that I feel like that serves a completely different purpose, though. There's a difference between wanting to engage in a community and also be entertained.
Isn't the whole point of a religious community to be part of the godly community at the end of your life?
No, I don't think so. I think. Well, my point was, I think that it makes more sense to me that there is something that is giving us a structure, because people don't like use a sports thing to justify, well,
I was just saying that the structural like community part of it is similar, and so like I guess when you put a god in there, then it's like it makes it bigger. But if you do like other communities, people aren't as concerned with how those come together. I guess it's like the church communities are like so big and so important that it says something about like everything.
What I mean is if everything is based in like nature, it's like naturalism, right? Where things are just based in physical progression, basically.
Right.
If that has always been the foundation for everything, and it's just been a steady process of things living and dying and trying to live longer and then dying and then learning from the previous to live longer and, so on.
It wants to reproduce, right?
Things want to live. Things want to, keep going as long as they can.
I think we do as like a species, but I don't necessarily think that that's one of the driving forces in evolution. Like one of the main driving force is reproduction. Us staying alive is not necessarily...
Well, that's what I mean though. Like you are wired to stay alive so that you can reproduce. Mm-hmm. Because, you can't really do it if you're dead. Well, maybe in the future.
Well, see, that's not entirely true. Because there's, like, moths that only, like, live for a day. But they, like, reproduce, right? And so it's like...
Right. But this is what I mean. I'm saying that and this is also kind of a question for me because it's, like, a human experience and not a natural experience. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think that dogs and cats are sitting there thinking, I wonder why I'm here. And, they just kind of do cat things and dog things, right?
They have tiny brain.
Right. But even animals that don't, like chimps and stuff, do we think that they're sitting there doing that?
I don't know.
Because there's some very...
Elephants have funerals and they cry.
Yeah, there's like some very... Like, we don't know. Maybe they are. Maybe they do have those questions and maybe they understand something and we just don't know what it is because we don't speak elephant. Who knows? But what I was saying is if it's based just on... If our whole system has always been based on things progressing in a natural way and the will to survive is only because of that and it's always been functional to just work with other people to build stable societies and to, get systems that work so that people can survive longer.
We're also tool-based. Like, I don't even think we can conceive the world if we can't gauge whether or not something will work for us or not.
Yeah.
Right.
If it is all down to, like, those things, which are just basically physical or, like, interactive things that we do in nature.
Something that will either work for us or not.
Right. If that's the system that everything is based on, and it always has been, then I don't understand what the need would be for a concept of something outside of the physical world to even have come about in the first place. Because it would never have been necessary for people if we already had all the tools we needed with each other to form societies and basically do a common good thing because we want other people to live, because if other people live and we live, then we both live and then we persist.
I mean, you'd basically just have to try to find the utility in believing people in a higher power.
Well, I don't know, because like I don't think that's what I mean though, because you don't need it if that's true. You at any point you wouldn't need it.
I don't really like the you don't need it, because technically we don't need anything. We just prefer,
Yeah, but that's not my point. My point is that
I'm so confused.
My point is that everything that we do, if it's from a natural point of view, is done because the motivation is survival, and that we don't have any deep purpose. It's just trying to survive. If that's what everything comes from, and that's all you actually need, that's the only driving factor that you actually need to survive and to form communities and to do this whole system that we have going, and you don't need other tools outside the physical world, then why would the idea of something outside the physical world have even entered into consciousness at all if it's not even necessary? If we don't actually need it, if it doesn't mean anything at all, why would we have ever evolved to be able or even introduce that question if it really doesn't matter? And all it has done really is cause more problems because people fight more over religion and have killed each other over that. I feel like it's almost been a hindrance to human progression. So if that was true, why would that have even entered the consciousness as an idea if it was never needed?
Yeah, but you could just say that about humans, couldn't you? It's like every human problem came from humans. It's like...
Yeah, but what do you mean?
I don't know, we could just get rid of those guys. Slippery slope. Well...
Do you understand, though?
Not really, because I keep coming back to, like, it's just, like, it's a tool that has value in some ways and is starting to lose value in other ways. Like, when you're in the world and you don't have a computer and you're trying to make sense of, like, anything, and all you have is just you and the people around you, and they don't even know what's going on, sometimes it's easier to just say it's a higher power.
I know, but my point is, like, why have we even needed an answer to those questions anyway? Why have those even come up?
I don't know.
Why would it be ingrained in us to develop those types of questions at all? Because it literally doesn't matter. All it does is, like, hinder people, make them anxious. And, like,
Well, not only, I mean, believing in God gives people a lot of comfort too.
Yeah, but that's like after a long time.
Well, no, there are people who get born into religion and they just...
No, I mean, that's after like religions have been established, like as a concept already. I'm talking about like...
I feel like there's a lot of assumptions on both my part and your part that are being made where
I don't understand the purpose of people having a concept of a higher power. Or a religion or anything like that if it was never
useful.
Like, I don't think it would be useful.
Except
especially
I can
in the
think
beginning.
Of situations where it is useful. That's my point. Like,
maybe now, but like when it was first being thought up, how would that have been useful? It's pretty divisive even now when they're all huge.
Right.
Concepts for like tons of people. So imagine if it's like a lot less people and it's only just getting started. I feel like that would cause problems too. And so it doesn't seem like it would have been a useful thing unless it was just you by yourself not telling other people about it. Because
I don't know.
If you come up with this...
Placebos are a thing.
Well, if you come up with an idea and you're like, I think that there's something else going on here. It's like, how is that conducive to your survival?
It's kind of like, I heard this thing once where a guy was talking about how like, two people get buried underground and one of them is like an atheist, so he's freaking out because he's like, my chances are pretty low, I'm freaking out, and he hyperventilates, uses up all the air and dies. But the saved person prays and has faith that God is going to save him. Therefore, he doesn't freak out. He keeps his breath steady. He calms down. And because of that, it saves him time. So when people come and find him, he didn't waste all the oxygen and they saved him in time. Right? It's like that doesn't come into question whether or not God is real. That just says that one person had an advantage over the other. So it's like...
Yeah, but I feel like that only works as a concept because that's after a concept's already been established. I'm literally just talking about what...
You can't find utility in the belief in like a higher power?
Now, but I don't know why at the beginning, like if that, like when it was first being thought up as a concept in its original form, if that's what happened or whatever, then what would have been the utility of it coming about in the first place? That's what I'm talking about. Because you can say anything about stuff now because it's way, way, way later. It's very much established as part of a human experience.
I don't know. Some guy looks up into the stars and goes, you know what? Those are our ancestors who were part of the hunting tribe. And every person who died on the trail went up and is now hunting for eternity in the sky.
This is what I mean, though.
That's not useful.
Why? No.
Why not?
Because that has nothing to do with, like, I don't understand why...
People had a fear of death, so people filled it in.
Yes,
I don't know.
But why?
Because death is scary. I don't know.
That's what I mean, though. There seems to be something else happening where there is this, like, common thread where people have part of their experience is a little... There's something there that you can't really identify that sets apart things. Because it's different than animals, even smart animals. And there's something that seems to push people a little farther than everything else. And we always look for something a little farther than everything else. And we look for meaning and we actually seek out meaning. And that has to come from someplace. And if it's not useful in the first place, like to any, like your immediate situation and what you're doing to just live, then I don't see what the point of looking at the stars or being scared of death or anything would benefit you at all. Aside from just, being afraid of dying because you'll be dead and you can't survive if you're dead. But that, like, why would
you're basically asking me, why do emotions exist in that?
No, I'm saying, why would the thought of something after or aside from physical life even have ever mattered?
No, but it matters because you have feelings about it. And I don't know why we have feelings on issues. We just do.
That's what I mean, though. Like, it doesn't...
Like, but that doesn't answer anything. That just, like...
To me, it opens up a possibility of there's something unexplained.
That's my point, is that there are things that are unexplained and uncomfortable and you can't answer them and you're just uncomfortable because you feel uncomfortable. But it's like, why do we feel anything? It's like, why do I feel uncomfortable? Why is uncomfortable a thing? And then you can't just answer that with, well, God. It's like, well, I don't, you can, but it's like, well, I get, that's not going to persuade me. I don't know, maybe. But
I don't know. I
get what you mean. And I'm not discounting you. I'm just saying that it's not quite enough for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it just always has made sense to me that there's something else happening because it just doesn't seem like there would...
Because it doesn't sit right with you any other way.
No, it just doesn't, it's not explainable. Because if I like am a remote tribe, even remote tribes who literally all they do is like kill things and, be with each other and eat and keep going. Even they have like rituals and different things that they make up. And that has nothing to do with really their ability to go and survive, because they could do that if they didn't believe in something too. So belief in something higher doesn't really have an impact on people actually being able to survive or not, especially if it's an earlier concept. And so I don't know what in the progression of people, evolutionary or whatever, would that be like necessary for? Like, I don't know. It just doesn't.
Well, I feel like there might be like a little bit of conflation too, because like it's one thing to talk about the pressures we put on ourselves, and then just the like evolutionary process. Like those two things aren't the same thing. Obviously, evolution wants to just reproduce, but then everything out of that is stuff that we pick to strengthen the group or whatever. And it's like those are two different things.
Yeah. I just can't get over the one hurdle of like how a concept of a higher power could even form if it wasn't needed. And I don't think it was needed if all you really need is what's around you in the physical world. Like there wouldn't really be a need.
I mean, but see, that's the thing. It's like billion, trillion miles away. There's like a moon somewhere. It's like, does that need to exist? Does it need to exist in relation to us? It's like, no, it doesn't really matter, but it's there.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And we're here.
If like all of a sudden one of the moon rocks goes, why am I a rock? I'd be like...
I'd have a lot more questions.
I'd be like...
than I've ever had
I'd
before.
be like, wouldn't it be kind of weird that this rock all of a sudden is like, why am I a rock? It's like, why are you thinking? Why are you thinking?
Yeah.
Why are you thinking in that type of way? That has nothing to do with your existence.
To be fair, though, with us, it was like a long process of like different things happening. Like it wasn't just one day we existed and then said it. It was like millions and millions of years, and then we had a question. Like it's a long process.
Yeah, I know. I'm just stuck because there's the physical reality, and that's the only thing we can observe, and we don't have any evidence, like hard evidence of like something outside of that. Then I don't understand why the concept would have evolved in the first place.
Confusing.
Because it's not necessary. So it could have just been like people have always just known that we're here and we're surviving and we're doing things together. And no one would have even been like, oh, well, we're doing this because of something bigger. We would just be doing it. And so I don't understand what the benefit would have been for that unless there's a benefit for it or there's like some reason for it.
Well, I mean, I can think of a couple, but yeah. I think
you're
asking.
See, the atheists come in and they're swooping and they're like, I got an explanation for everything.
I don't have explanations, but I have like an idea in my head how it could work. But I don't think you're looking for that. I think you're looking for like the deeper of like why anything. And like, I don't know.
I'm of the opinion that I don't think, given what I know about people and how people act, I don't think we're capable of this much without any type of anything existing. I feel like there has to be some other more complex thing going on.
There's a good video about kind of what you're talking about, the philosopher D's.
Is it going to tell me I'm wrong?
No, it might be like on the same track.
In like a positive way, or like a make me rethink even this thing that I'm pretty set in.
No, it might just like answer
because
some questions.
Because I'm not ready to knock this boulder down. I need a little bit of stability in my life.
It's a D-E-E-Z philosopher.
D-E what?
D-E-E-Z.
D-E-E-Z. Is this a D's nuts joke?
Maybe.
Is it?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Darn.
You can't give me that.
Well.
I've been around 5 years longer than you have. I know things. I've seen the world.
Yeah, in the back of my head, I was like, nah, I can't go with that one. That was too simple. Yeah, we'll try it. It didn't work.
So there is no philosopher.
Well, I'm sure there's philosophers on this object, just not D's.
Man, I was getting so excited. I was like, oh, I'm going to read about something cool.
I'm sorry.
Nope, it's just Scoop being a dick.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry.
Anyway, yeah, we kind of went off the rail a little bit because it started out with just like asking me where I'm at, and then it kind of got into like, all that. Thanks for tuning in again to the Opinion Pending podcast. There may be some delay again to the next episode because of holidays and all that jazz, but we'll be back as soon as we can. And
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, all that stuff, whatever you celebrate.
Mwah.
And we'll catch you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.